I'm sure we've all heard that this gospel passage is often used to make an analogy of the church traveling through time. So in other words, the boat that the disciples are in is a symbol of the church traveling through the sea, the waves of the sea. The wind is against them. They're not making much progress. They're far from the land. And in like manner, the church, she has to travel through time and the difficulties that every age brings. And there's opposition to the church. There's persecution of the church. But in the end, she will make it. And also the realization that our Lord, he sends the disciples on ahead of them. In other words, he stays apart from them. So it's kind of like Christ ascending into heaven. He's apart from us in one sense. In another sense, he's with us. But even though he stayed behind, was praying up in the mountain, he knew exactly what was happening on the sea. He knew how the disciples were struggling against the waves and against the wind. So he's not leaving them abandoned. And he knew that he was going to come to them. Notice when he gets into the boat, when they have Christ with them, it's like the wind ceases. And it mentions in another gospel passage that as soon as he gets into the boat, almost immediately they reach the other side. But we also have in today's gospel reading this account of St. Peter stepping out of the boat. And imagine that. Imagine the very first step. It's probably the most difficult step. They say it's often the hardest thing is to begin a project or to begin to do something new. But that first step, stepping into the water, trusting that you will not sink. Tremendous faith on the part of St. Peter there. But as he starts progressing, as he starts walking towards our Lord, he becomes frightened because he notices the strong wind and probably the waves also. And he starts thinking, this is not possible. I can't do this, which is true. In other words, it's a miracle. What's happening is a miracle, and Christ is allowing this miracle to take place because of Peter's faith in him and his desire to come to our Lord on the water. But you see, there's a very important lesson here for all of us. Very often, we become overwhelmed with the things of this world. For some people, it's just maybe they're just too busy. There's too much stress in their lives. They got too many things to do, and it's like, how are they going to manage all this? For other people, it might be health issues. For some people, it might just be relationship issues, And the problem with us is we focus too much on these things, and we try to figure out ourselves, how are we going to fix this problem? And it's kind of like we realize, I can't fix it. I can't overcome this stress. I have so much work to do. I just can't handle it. I can't handle this or that relationship. I just can't do it. This is what we tend to do. And this is not good. Now, yes, to a certain extent, we may need to think about some of these things. But the key is what St. Peter should have done. In other words, he was going towards Christ, and he should have remained focused on Christ, even though he may have been aware of the wind and the waves and the fact that it's impossible for him to walk on the water. But if he remained focused on Christ, he would not have started to sink. And you see, this is the key for all of us. We need to be focused on Christ, but we also need to be moving towards him. In other words, we need to put our spiritual life, our prayer life first. And if we remain focused on him, and we focus on growing spiritually, then yes, we may still be swamped with work or stressful situations or difficult relationships or whatever it may be. But because we're focused on Christ, he will give us the grace that we need to deal with these things to the best of our abilities. We may not be able to accomplish all the work that we need to do, but we'll say, okay, well, I can only do so much in a given day. I'm not going to let it bother me. I'm just going to do the best that I can, and okay, I'll try to do what I can tomorrow and the next day and so on. I'm not going to feel overwhelmed by all this work. I'm just going to do the best that I can. In other words, we tend to have a better view towards the stressors and difficulties in our day-to-day lives. And in fact, when it comes to marriage, they say that couples who go to church every Sunday have the lowest rate of divorce, practically non-existent. And they're better able to deal with stress in their life. That's what I wanted to connect to what I'm just talking about today. They're better able to deal with stress in their life because they put their faith first. And finally, they tend to live longer than couples who do not go to church every Sunday. And if you reduce stress, they say stress is the #1 killer. So if you're reducing stress, it makes sense that you're going to be healthier, you're going to live longer. So the lesson for us is we need to focus on Christ. Yes, we have problems, we have issues, we worry, we're often anxious. Our Lord tells us, don't be anxious, don't worry. Trust in God. And what does it mean to have focus on Christ in our day-to-day lives? Well, it means partially to be recollected, to be always thinking of Christ, but this focus needs to be a focus of trust, a focus of great faith, great love, but especially trust. You know, think of the message at the bottom of the Divine Mercy image. Jesus, I trust in you. And if we truly trust in Jesus, then yes, we may have difficulties, but God will help us, sometimes even miraculously, to be able to deal with those difficulties that every day brings for all of us.